Hey guys, my name's Ali and I'm a data analytics manager working in Oslo, Norway. This is the second video in my series Power BI for Beginners, and in this video we're going to take a look at Power BI Desktop and walk through the navigation in different parts of the tool. After going through this video, you should know things such as where do I create my measures, where do you go to load your data, and where do you see your finished data model. I'll also make sure to give you guys some of my personal advice and point out features that I use quite a lot when I make Power BI reports. Whenever you open Power BI Desktop, this is the first video that you're going to see, and it's just a startup screen. Now I know this isn't very important, but if you're looking at Power BI for the first time and you don't have any data to work with, or you don't know really where to start, you're watching this video, that's good, but there are some good sources here. And notice you can download a sample if you just want to see what a desktop looks like in Power BI just out of the box. You can click that. Otherwise, you might want to untick this, show this screen on startup if you don't want to see it again. But that's enough for this now. So this is what Power BI Desktop looks like the first time you just open it, and this is the first thing you're going to see. Now let's just take a look at the different parts here. Then I'm going to load in some data, because when you have data in here, it actually changes quite a bit what Power BI Desktop looks like. But notice on the right side, you have visualizations and you have fields. Now you can see here, it says you haven't loaded any data, which is why you don't see any columns or any fields here, but that will come soon. Then you have your visualizations, where you can create the elements that you are going to drag out on your page, which is what you see in the middle here, more or less like your canvas. Then on the left side, you have this menu right here, which will move you through different sections of Power BI. So right now we are in the report creation view, if we can call it that. Then you have another view where you can look at your tables, and then you have one where you can look at your data models. So that's where you can navigate between the different views. And then on top here, you have something very typical of Microsoft is, and that is, you have this ribbon, which you might have seen in Word, Excel, PowerPoint. They use this in all of their softwares. And the ribbon is going to change depending on which view you are in, or what it is that you are trying to do. So if we just quickly summarize right now, what have we looked at so far? On the right side, you have the elements that are used to create. On the top part, you have different, let's call it functions and features that will change depending on what kind of action you're taking. And we also have on the left side, we have this menu, which will move you through different sections of the software depending on what is your purpose. Are you trying to create something? Are you trying to do something with your data model? Are you trying to look at a table? That will also change. So right now I'm gonna load in some example data in Excel. I'm just gonna fast forward this because this video is not about loading data. We will come back to that later in this series, but I'm just gonna get some data in so you guys can see what does this look like when you have some data loaded. So now you can see it has changed a little bit. You can see on the right side we have some orders data. It's just a table with some different columns and some orders. But notice right away, now, if you've actually managed to get data in Power BI, you can already start to create visualizations. You can select a bar chart, you can drag out a country to the axis, and then you can drag out sales to the values. And then already there, you're starting to do different things. So keep in mind, on the right side, we have creation and formatting. We have how do you create the different elements. And now you can notice on top, I said previously, the ribbon is going to change depending on what we select. If we select a table, you can see it does table tools. If you select a column, you can see it goes into column tools. This is going to change as you are kind of working on different aspects. If it's a field, if it's a column, if it's creation, or if you're actually looking at tables in the data model or other tables that you have just created. But let's just delete this visualization and keep that in mind. That right side, creation. Actually, let's just bring it back for a little bit. I want to point out one more thing. When you create an element, you can see that I have dragged something onto the axis. So for each element, it expects you to enter, let's call it some sort of, it expects you to put different columns depending on their purpose, if it's a calculation or if it's a grouping onto different parts of the visualization. And each visualization has different types of, let's call it, requirements or inputs it expects to be able to do a visualization. So you can see now, right now, we have selected a bar chart, and you can see there's a box around it, which shows that it is active. If I change this to a line chart, it still wants an axis and some sort of values, but right now it might be expecting a date field. So let's find one, order date, which then, it happens over time. Okay, that's fine. If you choose a scatter chart, it's expecting x-axis and a y-axis and some sort of grouping. So it's different things the visualization expects depending on what kind of visualization it is. So let's make this into a bar chart with category, and let's do it. Yeah, we're just counting number of sales, which is fine. This is just for the example. Notice here, there are 3 different options. The first one is for putting in the different columns or the inputs that you need to create a visualization. The second one is formatting. What does the visualization look like? And the third one is, it's a little bit more advanced. There's more advanced functions and features. It is extended features of the visualization. So you can see now we're on fields, you have formatting, then you have analytics. We go to formatting, then you're going to get a lot of different things here. And these are just different things you can do with the visualization. Now you want to make sure it is active, because you see now, if I click outside the visualization, then it is actually showing the options for the page, the background page. You can see that if I go to page background, I choose another color, and I take down the transparency. So make sure when you click the element, it is formatting the active element that you have clicked. So if we go back, because that color is not very nice, now we are on the right bar chart. I can go in, data colors, I can change those to, let's say, red. I can turn on the data labels. I can change, the titles, the tooltips. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with the visualization. But just, pick up that, there is, let's call it a separate menu for each visualization, and you definitely want to learn how to use the formatting part of it, because that's where you can really make it pop. You can add a lot of different, like I said, labels. You can shape the visualization to be how you want it to look, and we will come back to that later, because the rest of the series we're going to show the different parts of the software, and we're going to go through how do you get data in, how do you create the data model, how do you visualize it. And I'm going to focus in on a lot of the things that I'm talking about now. But right now we're just keeping an overview of Power BI Desktop. So let's delete that. We have a blank canvas. So right side, creation. On the downside, if you want to create more pages, you can add those there, and they can have different combinations of visualization, filters, different elements from your visualization. Let's call it pane or options. Now, before we move on to the top part, which is the ribbon, let's just take a quick look at what we have here on the left side. So you can see you have report, which is the view we are in now, report creation view. Then we have the data view, where you can preview the table that we have fetched in. You can see you can get a little bit of information about the columns. What are the names? If you take it over the orders, what was the mode that you fetched it in. If you want to add a column or a new measure, you can do that here. If you want to rename the table, you can do that here. You can click the different columns. You can change, or I guess you can take a look at what is the contents of the column. But also notice how the ribbon on top changes. I click the table here, then it is table features on top. I click a column, then it is column features on top. What's data type? Is it, sorted a specific way? Do you need to, add some data group, the format type? Do you want to add a new column? So when you are in this view, you're working with the different tables. Before we start to get more into this, let's just jump onto the model view. Here you can see the different tables that makes up the data model. Now we only loaded one table, but if you have more tables, here you can see the relations, and you can also drag the relations to combine the different keys between different tables, because you can have some tables that are meant as category tables, what we refer to as dimension tables or lookup tables. And then you have some tables that have more function or more focus on having the metrics, which is what we call fact tables, and they have the calculations. Here you can combine those to make those data model diagrams that you might have seen. But since we have one table, we don't need to focus too much on that. But like I said, rest of the series, when we create a data model, when we get to that part, I'm going to use separate tables to show you guys how you create those connections also. But here also you can preview you can click on the table and you can see a little bit about the different columns here on the right. You can actually add a description. Is it allowed to see the column, because you can actually hide columns if you don't want to show them. Different type formats. You have some advanced stuff if you want to sort it, and other things. But this is more from the data model perspective. If we go back, let's notice on top here, what do we have on the ribbon? And you can see you have different sections. You have home, insert, modeling, view, help, external tools, etc. We can go through each one. I'm not gonna, go through every single function, but we can just touch on them really quickly so that you guys know what some of these are. So get data, quite self-explanatory. You can click here and you can see a bunch of different data sources that you can get or you can use to import data into Power BI Desktop. Usually you'll use Excel workbook, Power BI data sets, SQL Server, maybe analysis services, and text or CSV. And there are other options also, but those are used quite a lot. If you click more, you will get quite the extensive list here of different sources, and you have different categories. You have all file-based ways of fetching data, database, Power Platform, Azure, online services, etc. It's quite extensive, but you definitely want to know, how do I get data from SQL Server? How do I get data from, or let's say databases, CSV file, Excel files? You'll probably use that quite a bit. So the rest of this is just, let's call it shortcuts to some of the things I mentioned. Excel, Power BI dataset, SQL Server. If you want to create your own table, you can do that there. I'm going to show some examples for that later. If you have recently connected to something, you can do that there. And these two steps are, transforming data or refreshing data. Transforming data is where you can change and you can, do different things to the data after you have imported it into Power BI. And refresh is just refreshing your data from the data source. If you move over, there are a couple more where you can add visualizations and elements, but that ties quite closely into the menu I showed you guys before. On the right side, the visualizations and formatting menu. And then we have some other stuff, calculations. If you want to add measures, you can do it here, but I recommend, I'll show you guys later in this series how to do it much more efficiently. I very rarely use these. And then of course, if you want to publish some of your reports to the Power BI online service, that is the publish button to do that. If we look at the next menu, you can see this is inserting elements into Power BI. You'll usually use that with the menu on the right side, but these are, more, how can I say this, external tools, how you can integrate Power BI with Power Apps, Power Automate, and paginate reports. A little bit beyond this course, but it's just how you can use Power BI Desktop with the Power Platform. These are actually quite useful to know about because these are elements that you might use sometimes if you want a nice text box, buttons, shapes, or images. You want to know where this is on the insert menu because you don't, at least I don't often do that from the menu on the right side, the visualizations menu. I like to do that here, and this is the elements part. Very useful. if we look at the modeling, here you have, new measures, columns, tables, calculations in general. I usually do that directly in the columns or tables on the right side in the fields list. What is useful on this page though is especially this stuff right here. And that is, if you want to add parameters in your reports, a little bit advanced, if you want to do what if analysis, that menu can help you with that. If you want to look like what your data set looks like with security roles, you can do that under this security setting. Also very useful. Then you have some Q&A and language stuff, which I don't really use, but if that's something you want to try out, you can find it under the modeling. Then under the view, also some very useful functions. Here you can select your theme. You can look at the different ways your page looks with your either mobile layout or regular desktop layout. Grid lines, snap to grid, lock objects, very useful functions when you are formatting your reports, or if you want to see what it looks like, preview it in different ways. And then you have some of this stuff, which I use quite a lot, syncing your slicers, filters, bookmarks, selections, performance analyzer, also very useful. You use filters to maybe add different types of filters to a page. You use bookmarks if you want to use that together with buttons. Selections if you want to see what is selected on a page when you are creating a button. So if you click a button, which bookmarks does it activate, and what elements does it select? The performance analyzer, if you are wondering what is running slow on a page, it might be one element with one query. Very useful. And syncing slicers is also quite useful if you want to make sure that selections that happens on one page follows over to another page. So it's also very useful. And syncing slicers is, if you want to make sure that you have two different pages and you select something on page A and you want the same selection to follow to page B, you can use sync slicers for that. Also very useful. Then you have the help page. I don't use this that much, but of course there are some really good things here that you might want to check out. Guided learning, training videos, documentation support. The Power BI blog is quite useful to follow. New updates, summaries of updates. I think that's great. Community, if you want to ask some questions, and then you have some examples here, and then I guess consulting services. Never used that though, but the stuff that I'm trying to mark off for you is quite useful for you to check out if you're really trying to get into Power BI. External tools, last menu. It's a bit advanced, but these tools, Analyze in Excel, DAX Studio, Tabular Editor, are tools that you use as you get more advanced. Especially DAX Studio and Tabular Editor is good to check out. So if you wanna get into that, check it out, Google it. Might make some videos on it later, but DAX Studio can help you troubleshoot DAX, which stands for Data Analysis Expressions, if you want to optimize the response time on your calculations. And Tabular Editor is just an extensive tool of editing the data model, which is created in Power BI when you create a report. Also very useful. So definitely worth checking out. The last thing that I want to show you guys is when you click Transform Data, it opens another point of view, which is very useful, and that is the Power Query Editor, where you can transform and change your data. We're not going to go that extensive into it in this video, but the whole point is you have now opened the tool which can make all the changes that you need to do to the data to prepare it to be ready for analysis purposes. Quite extensive. You can see there's a lot of different things you can do here. Remove columns, keep rows, remove rows, data types, merge queries, there's AI insights. Then if you go to transform, there's a whole bunch of other stuff, extract, parse, run Python script, unpivot, fill, add columns, a lot of different ways you can add columns. Views, I actually haven't used this one that much. It's a little bit more on, you can see query dependencies, advanced editor. Then you have some tools, diagnostic tools, once again, a help menu. But this is actually opening sort of another tool, which is part of Power BI Desktop, That is Power Query, which is used to transform, cleanse, and change your data, prepared for analysis purposes. So usually the workflow is that you load data into Power BI Desktop, then you open Power Query, you transform it, you cleanse it, you prepare it in whatever way you need to be able to do data analysis on it. And then after that, you apply those, it will reload the data, it will apply all the changes, and then you have tables that are connected that you can then use for data analysis purposes. So now you should have a decent overview of Power BI Desktop. The software is getting updated every single month, so make sure you stay up to date. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask those in the comments. If you're interested in seeing Power BI Desktop used in a data analyst project, or you want to learn how to design great Power BI reports, then check out some of the videos you can see on the screen right now.